It's known as the mine that made Lake City.
UTE Ulay has two veins, and they were as wide as 12 feet, and they're primarily silver, lead, and zinc.
Prospectors first discovered the veins in 1871, when this region was still Indian territory.
The Utes didn't appreciate that and appealed to the government to put everyone off that was trespassing. And that led up to the Bruno Treaty of 1874, in which this area was purchased from the Ute Indians, in part because the government realized how important the mineral resources were here.
The two veins would be named Ute and Ulay.
And named Ute for the Indian tribe, and Ulay, which was an abbreviation for Ouray, Chief Ouray of the Utes.
The mine began production in 1874.
As we go on in the history of this mine, we see a succession of booms and busts.
Those highs and lows, a pattern which would last for over 100 years of operation.
It comes right up to the present, where we're realizing that we've got a potentially very important heritage historic site. And that's part of our culture in Lake City and who we are. Our character was developed by this mine and its long association in the county.
Today, much of the mine complex sits unused, but mostly intact.
You know, the dormitory boarding house building back here where many of the miners lived. On the far side of the mill building here is the assayer's office.
Inside the mill, all the equipment sits ready for the next load of ore.
This was the conveyor that brought the ore to the ball mill, and the ball mill is just a big container that essentially goes round and round with a bunch of these balls in it to essentially pulverize the ore.
The complex is now owned by Hinsdale County. Jack Nichols looks after the buildings.
At this stage of the game, we're just trying to protect the buildings and kind of come up with a plan for preservation in the future.
The site has always caught the attention of summer tourists to the region.
We could have places where trails throughout the property where people could see where the miners lived, you know, where the miners got their water, where the miners ate.
So there's a lot of interest in the history here, and that translates into an economic component in Lake City. If those people will stay an extra day or an extra afternoon because of our historic sites such as the UTE Ulay.
Realizing that potential economic impact means addressing the environmental impact from a century of mining.
Primarily, the main concern was high concentrations of lead.
That's where the State Department of Health stepped up to the plate.
We were able to incorporate cleanup and resurfacing of cleaned areas with the same aesthetic that it looks like it was mined, but we don't have the dangerous levels of lead associated with it.
That was huge. We couldn't do it without their help.
Steve Winery is the Hinsdale County Commissioner with a deep family connection to Lake City and the UTE Ulay.
My family is one of the first 4 families that moved to Lake City.
He sees potential in the UTE Ulay site.
The lower mill site piece is to make that into a museum, because that is probably one of the largest intact old historical mining camps still left in Colorado. And then the upper side of where the boarding house, and that is lease it out to private individuals for public use, either bed and breakfast or in the wintertime and ice climbing.
With time and money, the UTE Ulay could once again regain its role as an economic engine for Lake City.
For me, I would love for it to just be a living museum.
I have no doubt that Hinsdale County is on the right track for preservation and to be able to maintain this part of history.